The judge is saying, hey, I think Flynn could be guilty. So I'm protecting the government from this abusive Bill Barr, who's only doing this for Trump. And I'm not letting this case be dismissed. Now, you may say this case can't possibly get any worse. We've now walked through it from the beginning. Again, Obama ordered the hit. The FBI complied. They interview him on a Logan Act violation they weren't even willing to put down on paper because it's fake. They then come back and say, hey, we don't even think he was lying. They then edit the form where they write that, the 302, which is magically in the Ren and Stimpy left sock land. They then charge him with lying about sanctions they never asked him about. The Mueller team then lies about the original 302, saying, hey, we don't have it. It doesn't exist. Comey said it existed. And now you say this can't possibly get any worse. We have this fake judge, Judge Sullivan, not a real judge, he doesn't deserve to be called judge anymore, who won't dismiss this case, unbelievably, despite the government saying we can't prosecute this case against Flynn anymore. And here's Sullivan, hat tip on at Hans Monkey on, forgive me if I'm saying your name wrong, Hans, another great Twitter account. MAHNCKE, by the way, if you want to, at Hans Monkey, who picked this out, or Monkey, forgive me, it's not intentional, I'm terrible with names. This is the judge in the case. When the FBI and the DOJ, Joe, they refused to produce this original 302, which probably says Flynn wasn't lying in it. Nobody can find it. And here's the judge, this hack. He says the government, I'm sure, will address that. I don't want to focus on any other cases before the court, but sometimes throughout the best efforts notwithstanding, the best efforts of everyone, things happen and documents are lost. I mean, it just happens.
Okie dokie.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Here's the judge. Happens. Fill it in with the S. Rhymes with Pitt. That's the judge. The judge bumper sticker. Pitt happens. That's your response? That don't worry about it. The original 302, which I'm telling you says Flynn wasn't lying, has magically disappeared in favor of an edited 302 that's still bad. Doesn't even mention the sanctions he allegedly lied about. The FBI can't find it, and the judge is like, no worry, folks. Stuff happens. Good job, Judge. West Judge is great. This is an embarrassment to the bench. If you are ever appearing in front of this guy in federal court and you are a Republican or a conservative or anyone associated with Donald Trump and you think you're going to get an even remotely fair trial, you are crazy. That is turning into a third world Soviet style, old star chamber. Now, I wanted to get to this story last week, showing you how bad Judge Sullivan actually is. The judge in the Flynn case. The Department of Justice has now acknowledged that they found all these FBI materials, all this exculpatory material from Flynn, that they have no case. After laying out what I just laid out to you, it's obvious not only is there no case against Flynn, he didn't lie, he never lied about sanctions, he was never asked about sanctions, and the FBI's own notes, the note taker, Bill Pricestep, who's the interviewing agent who interviewed Flynn's boss, is writing down on paper, what's our goal? To set him up in a perjury trap? Not only does the government not have a case against Flynn, there's a legitimate case against the government here. The government has now come forward under Bill Barr's Justice Department and said, we are not prosecuting this case. And the judge, incredibly, will not let them drop it. Now, whenever I need good, deep legal analysis from someone with trial experience at the highest level, I go to Andy McCarthy at National Review. Here's a case. It was in the show notes last week. If you want to get our show notes, by the way, today's articles are really good. Bongino.com/newsletter. That is our show notes. We'll email you this stuff every day. We don't spam your inbox. We always appreciate you subscribing to our list. Our open rate, by the way, is insane. It's like 80%. I'm not messing with you. Thank you to everyone who subscribes to our newsletter. Here is the best article on this. How awful Judge Sullivan's decision to not let the government drop a case they don't have is. National Review, Andy McCarthy, the politicized order inviting amicus briefs against the Flynn case's dismissal. There's a screen cap from this. The judge doesn't only want to dismiss it, he wants to allow other people including this new judge, this guy, John Gleason, who wrote an op-ed filleting Flynn. He doesn't like Flynn, to brief them on the case, as if the judge can't figure this out on his own. From Andy McCarthy's National Review piece. This is about Rule 48. Now, just to be clear on what this, let me read this first and explain to you what he means and why this is so damning for the judge. Remember, the judge will not throw out the case, and he's using Rule 48. Andy McCarthy, quote, moreover, Congress prescribed Rule 48 to protect defendants, not the government. Exactly the opposite of what Judge Sullivan is doing. Don't worry, I'll translate this for you in a minute. Lawmakers were concerned about the potential for prosecutorial misconduct. They wanted to prevent strategic dismissals where a prosecutor pulls the plug on a case that's not going well, only to recharge it later. They wanted to forbid such abuses as repeatedly charging and dismissing an indictment, exhausting an accused's resources and capacity to defend himself. Let me translate that for you. The federal system I was involved in deeply for over a decade of my life is very complicated. There's a number of rules. The courts, the lower level courts, are a creation of the Congress, and the Congress makes rules. One of the rules, Rule 48. Keep in mind, the government wants to drop the case against Flynn. One of the rules, Rule 48, doesn't allow the government to drop the case without what they call leave of the court. That's in Rule 48. But that Rule 48 is not in there to protect the government. It's there to protect the defendant. In other words, the judge is saying, hey, I think Flynn could be guilty, so I'm protecting the government from this abusive Bill Barr, who's only doing this for Trump, and I'm not letting this case be dismissed. Referee Joe, audience ombudsman, you picking up what I'm putting down? It's not there to protect the government from Bill Barr. It's there to protect the defendant. Rule 48 is so the government, let's say when I was a Secret Service agent, I have a counterfeit case against Joe, but it's weak. I indict Joe to scare him. I realize it's a crap case. Joe gets a good lawyer, says, we're going to trial. We're going to drop it. 2 weeks later, I do it again. I indict Joe again. Joe has to get the lawyer again. Oh, no, we're going to drop it. Then it happens again. The case goes to trial. The judge is supposed to step in at some point and say, listen, we're not dismissing this case for that reason. If you have a crap case and this is going to trial, then damn it, it's going to trial. It's not to protect the government from Bill Barr. Sullivan's just making this up.
You just heard The Dan Bongino Show. You can also get Dan's podcasts on iTunes or SoundCloud. And follow Dan on Twitter 24/7 @DBongino.